Hello, my friends, and Happy New Year. I know it's halfway through the first month of the new year, which means it's just going to fly by like the rest of them do, but I feel like I haven't really made any videos this year, even though I have made a few. Um, it's funny because I guess for me it's seemed like a lot longer than it probably is. I've been locked down in my house for the last like week. I took last Friday off because I thought it was going to snow, and it did, but not as bad as I mean, I could have made it. But then, boom, freezing rain hits. It just turned into a nightmare, and I've taken all week off and been trapped at home. Snow is one thing, but freezing rain is BS because you can't go outside, you can't do anything. Everything's just coated with a layer of ice. So it is what it is. But it's funny because usually I would take these opportunities to make more videos and do more research and look into things. But instead, I sat on my ass and watched a show called The Man in the High Castle and just kind of melded into the couch and did nothing for 5 days. And it feels good to be lazy sometimes. But I feel like if I'm not constantly challenging my brain, at least, even if I'm not challenging my body heavily, then I start to go insane. And so I made a few videos, but I had a few drinks and I ended up not sharing them. Did a live cast once, but this morning I just woke up and I had this just inspiration to get a few things done, get ready. I was watching some carpentry videos, and funny enough, they got me inspired. It was this guy who's like 68, and he was talking about the shit he went through when he was in his 40s and 30s with back pain and how he dealt with it. And I thought back, I quit my carpentry career, quit, like, 6, 7 years ago after my back just got to the point where I couldn't do anything. It might have been like 10 years ago now. I felt like I couldn't even be a dad. I couldn't lift my kids up. I had to have people help me tie my shoes, that kind of shit. And it sucked. And I thought I was doomed. Well, I wasn't doomed. I pulled myself out of there. But ultimately wanted to keep that flow, to keep that alive, to keep that carpentry part of myself alive, because I enjoy what I do, because it takes a lot of thought, it takes a lot of planning, and everything's unique. Every single day is unique. Even if you're building something, the same thing every day. I mean, if you do drywall, just drywall, or just framing, then it might get boring for you, or maybe not, but you're at least doing different things or different projects every week. I do a little bit of everything in carpentry. I do construction, but I specialize in like finished carpentry, furniture grade stuff. I like working with really fine woods, and that brought me to today's topic, which was the chisel. And it's not about the chisel. It's not about tools. It's about that metaphor I thought was the perfect one to compare to our brains, and not just in the obvious, oh yeah, sharpen chisel, sharpen your wit, that kind of stuff. I know that that's, a well-known metaphor there, but a chisel is an amazing tool. It is so versatile. And I guess I wanted to compare the way people talk about chisels to the way that people talk about your mind, how to keep yourself sharp, how to keep yourself happy, how to stay out of depressive episodes, and to remove anxiety from your life forever. And it always comes down to this idea of, for lack of a better term, alchemy, mental alchemy, turning lead to gold. You turn soft, poisonous metals into amazing, so I guess soft golds. The metaphor of alchemy, of course, there are a lot of people who take it very literally. To me, it's always led to the same conclusion that alchemy, really the ultimate discovery of an alchemist, is that he doesn't need the gold at all. And if that makes sense. So this is why I think the chisel is the perfect metaphor for keeping your wit and for sharpening your wit. There are so many different comparisons I thought of. And the first one is YouTube has probably thousands and thousands of videos of people telling you about chisels. There are so many different kinds. There are so many different uses and needs and interests people have in chisels. But even the very specific genre of sharpening a chisel, let's just say that there are probably thousands, if not tens of thousands of videos on the internet and web pages telling you how to sharpen a chisel. Now, it seems like the most simple thing. Now, if you think of that as sharpening your knowledge base, sharpening your wit, right? Follow me here for a minute. There are many different ways to achieve the same end. There is no one size fits all. But there are some factors that need to be determined. One of them being, say, what tools do you have? The funny thing about sharpening chisels is there are people that will go out there and they will select the best whetstones and, corundum, I think this stone is, several different types of, sharpening stones. And they will get these little devices that will cost hundreds of dollars with these sharpening kits to try to get the perfect edge on a chisel, right? But the irony here is that no matter, you might think that a sharper chisel is better, but often it works against you, especially if you don't know how to use that chisel. If you aren't an expert woodworker and you don't understand what you need it sharpened for, then you can have as sharp of a knife or chisel as you want, and you might just hurt yourself. And I thought this was just so, I don't know, it really rang true with the way that people handle knowledge, with the way people handle information and awareness, that it's, that sword can cut both ways, and you definitely could find yourself in a situation where knowledge is better off not known, or you wish you didn't know something or weren't aware of something, or you might make a poor decision based on thinking you know more about something than you do. Being too aware, having your chisel too sharpened, if you will, can work against you. And funny enough that with some woodworking projects, you need a dull chisel. There are some cases where people purposefully dull their chisels because it works better for the purpose suited. And this is interesting too, if we think about dulling our senses. Not necessarily saying we need dumb people to do dumb things, but that maybe is part of it as well. Otherwise, there's no comparison to see what is a better choice. If people don't make bad decisions, we don't know what a good decision is. It's one of those kind of catches. But different chisels have different purposes. There are millions of different ways to sharpen them. And the funny thing is, it usually comes back to the basics. The old-fashioned way, an old piece of frickin' sandpaper. There are many different methods of doing this with a reversed upside-down palm sander with a special little bit to hold your chisel. Look, if you're working on super fine furniture and doing mortise and tenon joints on super expensive lumber, then yeah, of course you want the very best, sharpest, most perfect chisel. But for general purposes, your average Buck Brothers or any other general purpose chisel set will work. And another thing about it is even when it has a bunch of rust on it, oxidation from years of not being used, it's pretty easy to spruce it up and get it back to where it was. Even if it looks a little rough around the edges, it still serves the same purpose. Doesn't have to look good to perform well. Neither do we. The person that you least expect to be the witty one might often be the one with the greatest wisdom to offer. Perhaps he's given up on trying to look the part and play the part. But eventually all this wit does oxidize and it all falls apart. And I'll say the reason why I guess each chisel is a perfect tool to use in my examples here. I have a good experience with misusing a chisel. Just like when I was younger and when I was about 20 years old, when I was cocky as hell and I thought I knew everything. Well, I also, my friend's father passed away and we were in his wood shop going through his stuff. We were looking for black powder because he used to load his own ammunition. So we would put the black powder in containers and set them off and create problems for the city that we lived in. Just having fun, just being kids. But we found his old chisels, and these chisels were in drawers and they had some rust on them, and we decided we were going to carve walking sticks. So let me just tell you the simple story of what happened. I'm holding a walking stick like this with my left hand. While I'm carving it with my right hand, the top portion was sticking up about 1.5 feet. Had the chisel aimed right at my hand as I was carving downwards towards myself. First lesson, think you're smarter than you are, till that chisel slips. And it went right down the side of my hand and completely cut my hand open like a couple inches deep. I could see the tendons in my wrist. I taped it shut like a badass and went about my day. My friend looked inside the cut and he just puked, and he wouldn't help me sew it up, so I was there with thread trying to do it myself. And I was like, yeah, I'm stupid, but I'm a badass, and still to this day little pieces of like shit come to the surface. Anyway, enough about my awesome, cut. It was a horrible experience, and I learned a lot about it. I learned the importance of not just a sharp chisel, but handling it properly. Just like we need to handle our wisdom and use them safely. Use our minds safely in this world, because sharp can be dangerous. Use smartly or it will break also. That's another aspect. You might think that you've got a great chisel with a great edge on it and bend it a little too far one direction. Try to use it for a purpose it wasn't meant for and break the corner off. I think every carpenter's probably done that. And I imagine we can do the same with the knowledge we have. Just push a little too hard and screw ourselves over. And once you've broken the edge of a chisel, it's never repairable again. Yeah, it can still work. You can cut it down, but it'll never be the same, I guess is the thing. So use smartly. And as I said, looks don't really matter, but the edge does matter, and it has to suit the purpose you need. The wisdom we have in our lives, the knowledge that we turn into wisdom, these factories of wisdom, they are not as obvious as they seem. There are some really extremely goofy people out there who seem like idiots, who are very, very wise. And there are some people out there who are very soft-spoken, nicely dressed, and use a lot of big words, who are dumb as rocks when it comes to living their own lives. And when I say stupid, I realized I made a post the other day where I said stupid people are basically the problem in this planet. And it got mistaken. I realized afterward, I didn't remove it, but I thought this is going to get misunderstood by people who think they're stupid. You're not stupid if you've made mistakes in your life. You're not stupid if you don't have it all together or you can't afford your rent. You're not stupid because you didn't make it through school. You're stupid if you have the knowledge to make good decisions and you're aware of values and your values and you're willing to break them and make decisions that harm other people and harm the world, which are usually people in power, then you're stupid. Stupid in the sense that I would prefer to use the word. And that's what I really meant by it. People who have the knowledge to know better, but abuse that knowledge and abuse that privilege. The kind of people who research human behaviors. The Edward Bernays of the world, who was like the father of advertising, the father of propaganda. And you imagine, for the past, thousands of years, propaganda has been a tool, but, over the last 100 years, it's been celebrated. And you imagine, okay, if the propaganda that we weren't aware of at the time, we are now, how much of it today are we not aware of? How much of this knowledge that we have, this wisdom, this wit, and this sharpened chisels that we have, how much of it is total bullshit? And also, how much of it doesn't matter? How much of it is just sidelining the real issues? The way that the average person can't buy a home, or that we're not doing better as Americans each year as we should be, right? That the world is still at war and we're still sending weapons to other countries, that we're still fighting wars that don't matter, that we shouldn't be fighting against enemies that we create through our own legislation and decisions around the world, not just the US, but all countries. And when you look around at this world, you think, I know better. I wouldn't get myself into this situation. But that brings us back to our own ignorance and the greatest wisdom lying in knowing that we know nothing, that I don't know what goes on behind closed doors in the deeper, darker depths of politics and meetings between leaders. I don't know what it's like to be a general on the battlefield, just like I don't know what it's like to be an iron worker or to work in the mines. And each one of us kind of shares the knowledge we have with one another, and we try to keep our particular tools sharpened to the degree we need, as well as making sure that we have the right one to begin with, that we're not running around with a little, miniature chisel when we're trying to do, work on a lathe, or we're not using a lathe chisel when we're trying to, do some fine corner on a custom chair. Find the right tool for the job, sharpen it to the degree it needs to be sharpened, and don't worry about what it looks like. Just worry about how it functions. I know many of you have good hearts out there, are people who want to see a better world and want to improve your own lives, not for the sake of being better than other people, but for the sake of us all being better. There's a small group of people out there that I've met in my life that understand this concept, that we better ourselves to better everyone, and that you're, being yourself and being outspoken doesn't mean that you're arrogant or egotistical, but you might get misunderstood as being arrogant when really you're just sure and confident about how you feel. But ultimately, it's very hard to define that to other people. The ones who seem to have the sharpest wit are often the ones that just are quickest on the draw with the words. The pundits, the pundits and the political commentators, the ones that just always have the right word for the occasion, but really don't have any substance in the long run. Be a person of substance. You can use your chisel to create some shitty little, you could even use it as a weapon if you wanted, but build something worthy and take your time with it. Nothing physical, doesn't have to be a monument to history, but just build yourself a little corner in society where you stand for your values and you make sure other people know that, whether you're right or wrong. And most of all, be willing to change your opinions when you see fit. And don't be considered a flip-flopper or I changed my mind and therefore I'm a loser. No, if you change your mind, you're stronger. But you don't have to jump to other sides. You stay neutral and look at things the way I believe that we were meant to, with a balanced perspective, with your eyes wavering and looking both ways and saying, oh, I'm standing in the middle on this one. So I keep my chisels between dull and sharp, but I try to keep them on the sharper end. Anyway, I'm out. Thanks for listening. Happy New Year to everyone. And be sure to hit subscribe and like and all that crap people say. And if you want to donate, you can go visit me on Patreon. I'll be uploading a few extras there soon. Again, going to try to get back into YouTube videos this year and try to start making something interesting if I'm out and about, but we will see. Once again, my life is not that exciting, so all I have are my thoughts in the back of my dark office. Be well.